hate whenever we do these stupid player profiles. I'm only on here once a month, and yet I'm like, oh yeah, Billy's right. Yeah, I love that film review. Oh, it's great. Yeah, you're right. Keep talking about the numbers.
Saying like he reminds me a little bit of like Tyquan Thornton, but a better route runner. That's kind of how I view him. And whether it should be or not, size is going to be a concern. He's like a garden gnome running around, but he's good.
Prospect profiles. So this week I chose Troy Franklin and Jacob Cowing. Really not for any major reason. I thought they would be more of a versus thing in my own head, but apparently not, and that's okay. Troy Franklin would probably be going, first roundish. Of your rookie drafts, Jacob Cowing's probably like a third round guy, but Jacob Cowing was one of the guys that really always stood out to me. So when I first opened the sheets and started looking at these guys, I also really, really love Troy Franklin. So I'm gonna hop in there and talk about Jacob Cowing. So Jacob Cowing, 5'8", 168, pretty slim, but he runs a 4.38 40. Played school for 5 years. And I think that's probably one of the biggest hits that you're going to see from him is that he was just there for so long out of Arizona. 30% market share, breakout age of 18.6, which is awesome. This dude never had a market share receiving yards under 20 in his entire career, all 5 years. 61.4 college dominator. It's absolutely smashed right there. 36.8 college target share. His zone yards per route run last year was 2. His man yards per route run last year was 1.4. Career best total yard per route run was 3.8. Contested catch rate was down at 35.7. It's higher than 20%, which is kind of what I this year been trying to go for. I think maybe 25 is probably okay. Slot rate 71 or 70.1%. So he plays out of slot primarily. You guys will probably attest to this when you guys talk about what we saw on film, which is okay. We get a lot of points from slot receivers. We get a ton of points in PPR from slot receivers. There's nothing wrong with that. 5.8 yards after the catch per reception. Everything that I see on the sheets, Jacob Cowing is easily going to be a good wide receiver 2 on any team. All in all, good player, good production of everything. Kind of wish he'd come out earlier. I know that, things like NIL and the COVID year and all those other things kind of push some of these players to play a little bit longer than they usually do, but I do like Jacob Cowing quite a bit, and you could get him right now in about the mid-third round of your rookie drafts. What do you guys got on Jacob Cowing?
A little bit later, actually. If you look at our graphic, the ADP per DLF is 41. Okay. Wide receiver 21. So down there for us, we have him ranked more around what you were talking about in the third round, which makes a little sense. I think we're going to like him maybe a little bit more than consensus. And whether it should be or not, size is going to be a concern, right? Like this is going to be a concern, at least perception wise. But big hits do look big, and defenders push him around. Like there's no doubt about it. The kid is slight. He just is, right? He's not bringing a lot of weight. But he does really bring excellent lateral quickness and evasiveness, burst and smooth transition speed. He's a technically sound route runner. He exhibits good nuance during the route. Like you see peak moves, you see jab steps. He closes the gap on defenders before he's going to make a move. You see some shoulder fakes in there. He's a twitchy athlete. I see a little bit of like some Emmanuel Sanders in him stylistically, just kind of how I, when I watch him, what I kind of see. And if you go and hop on our YouTube channel, you see the film room where I dig in really deep on him. And I mean, he puts dudes in a spin cycle all the time. Like on skates, these guys are completely turned around, looking the other direction, trying to figure out where he's going. And, I think that these are the kind of skills that can translate to the next level. So I really like what I see out of Cowing. Draft capital, landing spots, obviously going to matter a ton with him. It just is. The size is going to push him down down, the draft board a bit. So for me, he's going to be a guy who I'm probably going to have a good bit of. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you. I hate whenever we do these stupid player profiles. I'm only on here once a month, and yet I'm like, oh yeah, Billy's right. Yeah, I love that film review. Oh, it's great. Yeah, you're right. Keep talking about the numbers. It's really at that spot where I think this guy plays so physical actually for his size. Like he's a slender dude. They call him 5'11". He's definitely probably like 5'9.5". He's probably closer to Malik Washington in Virginia than he is to anyone else in this draft, I think, in terms of just profile and how he plays. I watched 2 games probably from start to finish, and just in terms of his tape, it was the Arizona State game and the USC game. I'm just going to talk about the USC game because I actually thought it was a great game for him to ball out. There was one major lame duck that was thrown to him in the into the corner of the end zone, where he basically just free bodies into the corner, just throws a shoulder into him, bumps off of him, and it was completely legal. Catch a touchdown. Corner was probably solid, 6 foot, 6'1", and he just made that guy look slender. Second thing I do want to also call out is his quarterback in Arizona was dreadful. Fafita, no joke, put this poor guy out there a couple of times. He took some really big hits, as Billy alluded to, and really did not think that was due to him. With that being said, in his physicality, I also saw a lot of it, not just in the air, but also on the line of scrimmage. Like, for a little guy, he's definitely bodying up against cornerbacks. Yeah. He is able to create separation, not just with his elusiveness, not just with his really fantastic jab step that he does as well, but more so also with upper body. Like, the dude is just a guy who wants to ball. Those guys stand out to me, man. Like, they really do. And, maybe I'm going to lose on a couple of them throughout the way, but I think that these are the types of profile players that I want to continue to buy in on, because so much of what he does looks good. 2 negatives that I did want to point out. One is that his out routes are fucking dreadful. I don't know what it is, but the dude runs like these curved out routes. They just don't look right. They just don't look like he's willing to put the right step into either his left foot or his right foot, depending on what side of the field he's on. That was a slight negative for me. But you guess what? You just don't give him that route. Like, it's pretty simple. NFL coaches know how to do that. Second is that he had a couple of second effort catches. His hands, when extended, would find him to do a slight bobble, and then on the second catch. I think in the NFL, those are going to probably be more often than not incompletions, which will probably get sound out a lot faster. But in the college game, he looked good for those elements. He looked like he was able to adapt. So as long as he's able to work on those small little nuances to his game, I think he could probably get you a lot of value out of that, probably late 3rd round, potentially even early 4th round rookie draft, wherever he might be going.
Yeah, that hands note is fair on those outbreaking routes. Like, I do feel like he's the kind of guy who could potentially develop at the next level with good coaching with those, right? Because he's a pretty sharp route runner for the most part. He has a good, a nice diverse release package. Like, he has good footwork. Like you said, the jab step stuff, he's crisp, right? So there's one that I'm thinking of, an outbreaking route. I'm trying to remember who it was against. It might have been UCLA, where he absolutely bends it out, but he still puts the guy the guy spins completely around defending him, and it's because he put a move on during it, but he still bent the route. Or I think it may have been a peek. He peeked outside, and the guy just had no idea where he was going. So I do think those nuances will potentially allow him to build at the next level. So we'll see if that happens. But yeah, it's really interesting. I actually thought, just based on kind of some of the notes that I saw, that you weren't going to like him as much as I did. So that's interesting that you kind of fell onto the same page. Before we move on here, Uriah posted this in our stats chat on the Discord the other day. This is showing what his adjusted yards per team attempt by age over time versus Marvin Harrison Jr. This isn't bad. I mean, again, he's an older prospect, and it declined as he got older, which isn't what you want to see, but encouraging at some level, I guess. We can move on.
All right. And yeah, if you want to see some 8 out of 9 routes, it's okay. Yeah, 8 out of 9 routes is really good. So we'll move on to Troy Franklin, Oregon. Really like the player. Bigger dude. I didn't see, that's the thing, when I look at the sheets, I'm not looking at height and weight and all that stuff until later. Honestly, I was pretty surprised at Jacob Cowling being so small, but it is what it is. If I watched the guy, I probably wouldn't be so surprised.
You wouldn't. He's like a garden gnome running around, but he's good.
That's all right. Put him up on like one of those big like 6'3" corners. They can't even reach down and grab him.
Yeah, he was definitely on stilts when they measured him. That's for sure.
All right, Troy Franklin, Oregon. They got him. Player profiler has him 6'2", 176. So tall but skinny. He ran to 4'4", 140. He only played 3 years, so he's coming out early. A breakout age of 20% market share. He never reached 30% market share of receiving yards on his team, which is a bummer, but he did it at age 19, which is A-okay. And probably A-okay for that offense. If I'm trying to think back at Oregon wide receivers, that's probably fine for him. 27% college dominator, 20.6 college target share. Those are all like, it's okay, but nothing that like really stands out where, you have Cowing with 61.4 college dominator and 36.8 college target share. So there's a pretty big discrepancy. But when we talk about yards per route run, last year's zone, Troy Franklin, yards per route run was 3.06 or 3.07. Last year, Troy Franklin, man, yards per route run was 3.36. Those are all amazing marks, great marks. Career best yards per route run was 3.3. Pretty much right in line there with Cowing had 3.8. His contested catch rate was 36.8. It's a little higher than I want, but it's not bad. We've seen guys with like, upwards of 60%. Slot rate was 18.2. Obviously, he's a bigger dude. He's probably not going to be playing a slot a lot. That's not so surprising. And he has a pretty respectable 6.6 yards after the catch per reception. So I'm assuming once this guy gets the ball in his hands, he's actually got a little bit of wiggle jiggle after he gets the ball in his hands. What do you guys got?
Yeah, it's funny because the numbers don't pop so much more than a guy like Cowing, but he's ranked 12th or 13th KTC for us, 11, ADP 12, wide receiver 6 or 7. Just interesting how much higher he's ranked and just kind of straight on paper. But for me, I mean, Franklin, he's obviously got track star speed due to his elite quickness, elite speed. He has a diverse release package. I would say he's a pretty good route runner. He honestly saying he reminds me a little bit of like Tyquan Thornton, but a better route runner. That's kind of how I view him. It's not great. I know he exhibits some manipulation, but he does do a lot more than Tyquan Thornton. Don't get me wrong. Like he exhibits some manipulation movements during his routes, right? He's got fairly refined technique, but he does lack some consistency play to play. And while he can evade defenders, I don't think he really forces missed tackles, right? Like I think he's good at just like breaking away in open space or, in stride when he gets the ball in his hands, something like that. But he's not gonna, he's not gonna use his lateral agility and juke a guy out on a regular basis. Like obviously most of these guys are athletic enough to do it from time to time. But again, it's really more an open space thing than it is him being able to force missed tackles. He separates mostly with speed, but he does sprinkle in some technique. I do want to make sure that's clear, but to me, he relies more on the speed than anything. So, I mean, he's obviously a good player. I think he can be successful at the next level, but he's just not a super refined guy to me. And I don't know if that's really his game. And so he could totally develop at the next level, and the speed is a threat, and he's probably going to get drafted high. So, all good things. But he's not quite my cup of tea, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of players in this draft who I'd probably rather have over him at the back end of the first round there. We obviously have to see how it shakes out, but he's just not been my favorite guy, and I didn't think that he really popped off the screen for me. Other than that speed. What about you, Jake?
Dude, I literally hate that you made that Tyquan Thornton comp because you saw the show sheet. You already saw the comp I made, but whatever. My comp, because it's so much better, is a grade A version of Jalen Hyatt. Like, I do think that, if he was a USDA prime meat, he is, Jalen Hyatt grade A version.
That ain't prime.
Prime version of that, right? Like he's like the A1 Wagyu instead of the A5, right? There's stuff to like. I do think that His explosiveness after the catch is definitely very present. I did watch 2 games. It was Oregon State and USC, I want to say. I try to go for some of the games that have a little bit more higher pedigree of defender talent. That's really what I would try and hope is going to be comparable. But honestly, some of the Oregon State corners were dreadful, so that didn't really help. To Billy's point, I honestly didn't really see his diverse release package. Like, I thought that the team kind of handicapped him a little bit in a way. Like, they gave him like the same 5 or 6 releases and he did them well, but I didn't feel like his actual route participation was at all that unique. Most of the way through, I found him to be relatively one note with some like micro changes there, which, when you are as explosive as he is off the line, it allows you to kind of break away from those nuances. But in a similar vein to a lot of my criticism around players like Xavier Worthy or here in Troy Franklin, they lack nuance, right? They lack those elite traits. And when your elite traits are more so tailored to excessive speed, I personally want off unless you're able to pair those things with other intangibles that other players just don't have, where you can actually create those gaps. So the biggest thing that I would say with Troy Franklin is if he's able to find himself a specific role in a team rather than find himself in a team that needs him to be truly the wide receiver 1, I think he'll be pretty productive as a rookie. I think he can grow. There's definitely a lot of physical frame there to become a better wide receiver, and I don't want to tarnish his image because of that. I think it's more so just how ready is he for the NFL? In my opinion, he still has a pretty big gap for me to see really a large scale use case for him. I do think that he's probably a wide receiver where he has kind of similar usage as a Deshaun Jackson, right? You have 5, 6 targets, most of which are, ranging between 20 to 30-yard passes. That's fine. There's a role for those types of players. Does that mean that Troy Franklin probably teeters to the late first, early second in the NFL draft? I think so. Does that mean that he also probably falls into that same group in Dynasty rookie mocks and actual rookie drafts? I think probably as well. So depending on where he lands in the NFL, I think we'll probably see him around that 111 to 203 range, honestly.
That Deshaun Jackson comp is a good shout. That shows up in my notes as well. But just to your point about the release package, just going right to my notes, under his beating press, but uses a lot of speed release and the same double move was the first part of my notes, right? Which is, so, I mean, but the more I went on, I did see some shuffle releases, some stuff like that, but he's obviously creating that short area separation more with the speed mixed with that release. So, I mean, I do think that, I guess I shouldn't say diverse, but I do think that he offers more than a one-trick pony type thing, which some guys just have a speed release and they can't do anything else. You know what I mean? Especially with the style of player that Troy Franklin is. I do want to hit on this, AJ over here being an absolute madman. Troy Franklin over Brian Thomas. No, I mean, I think actually plenty of people might have that opinion, but to me, it's not very close. I think Brian Thomas is a much better player. He has much better size, quickness for his size. He offers really good speed. I think he's great at the catch point, just all sorts of things that I really like about him. So I just think he's more of a versatile receiver at the next level. So I'll definitely have Brian Thomas ahead of Troy Franklin. He said he's Addison-ish, which, I mean, if Addison couldn't run routes as well, then yeah, he might be Jordan Addison. I think Addison is a much, much better route runner. He is like when I describe a technician, that's what I think of, right? Where he can break down guys, in the middle of his routes. He can stack guys. He can, at the top of the route, he can separate really well. And he's not that big doing it either. And I just don't see that from Franklin on a consistent basis personally. He's saying we drinking that haterade. I love having AJ on here, man. Thank you for joining the show. Absolutely a pleasure. Yeah, that's all I got on Franklin. These two guys are super interesting. I for some reason feel like potentially they could be closer together than the community at large thinks. Not saying that they're that close together, but closer than first round and fourth round. I think there's somewhere in between there where these guys meet a little bit closer in the middle.
Yeah, I think to that same vein, I see Jacob Cowing being able to fit into an offense more easily, similar to that of, and I'm not going to make the comp as, they're similar players, but to that of a Tank Dell or even a Josh Downs. You saw how as rookies they were able to slot into, no pun intended, into offenses pretty easily, and a lot of their relationships with their rookie quarterbacks also helped. So that is something that Cowing probably won't have the luxury of, but there's always the chance that in the next coming weeks Cowing could link up with a Drake May, a Jaden Daniels, a JJ McCarthy in any of the off-season work. And those types of relationships, I do think, mean a lot in this game. And I think Cowing is the type of receiver that will go probably in late third, maybe even late fourth round in the NFL draft, where, Drake is saying to the front office, hey, I really liked working with Jacob. And those are the types of relationships that might mean a lot moving forward. So something to be mindful of.
The Patriots, right? They need some receivers and stuff, and the quarterback and all
Please
that.
Don't go there.
Franklin did have some crispy rats, but I do want to mention that Uriah pointed out that he didn't have a high slot percentage, and to Jake's point,
no, he did not.
Jake's point at the next level, the type of routes that Troy Franklin is typically running, and his skill set may not translate to that versatile of a player at the next level, where you're winning easier too in the slot. Typically, you're going up against mismatches that are better suited for that player most of the time. And if you can't work out of that area and you are not slotted, but you're pushed to the outside, and that's really where you're set. I just don't know. I think that it, like you said, it offers Jacob Cowing more opportunity to find a role than I think Franklin on a consistent basis potentially. Obviously, Franklin is going to definitely have the higher draft capital. He's going to be higher in drafts, and he's going to have more time to get right, develop, and become the player that we want him to be. So I don't think we're trying to shit on Troy Franklin here. To be honest, it might sound like that, but I just don't think we're as high on him as the community. That's all.
We have him ranked pretty high, man. Like in the graphic.
No, we are literally as high on him. Actually, maybe higher than he's ranked 11th for us. So yeah, I think he's going to drop a little bit for us though.
Yes, sure. We will probably be slightly below market, or at least I will be. But it's important, I think, to even be slightly hypercritical of the players that you think are going to land around the late first, early second, so you can really decide on who you believe is better suited for you. Because at the end of the day, if you just go off of consensus, I think that's kind of where you fall into these buckets of taking guys that might not have the same ceiling that you are expecting. I think a lot of people make grandiose expectations of these players without really understanding their profiles. And I think this is a perfect example. And lastly, to the point that Billy was making, the NFL has changed. Like guys like Kenny Moore, who is a cornerback, he is a literal slot corner. They're getting paid the same amount of money now as literally CB1s. There's a reason. Defending out of the slot is hard as hell. So the NFL is trying to make that become a thing, because more wide receivers are playing out of the slot.
All right. One quick question for you guys before we hop into our under the hood topic. Today, would you rather pay up for Troy Franklin, where he's going in rookie drafts, or would you rather gamble on where Cowing's going in rookie drafts?
100% go with Cowing. Boom.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely glad that Uriah said this, because I wanted to jump into this point before we moved on, which is I don't want people to mistake us being like, yeah, Cowing is better than Franklin or anything like that. Like that's not even necessarily what we're saying. We're saying
the whole reason to bring it up was the disparity.
For sure.
Where they're going.
Yep.
No, for sure. But I think overall, we're saying the talent level may be a little bit closer than everyone is expecting, but also this guy's going in like the 4th round. Like, yeah, like we love value here at Dynasty Underdog. That's what we love. Like, we're value hawks. If something's gonna fall to the 4th round and we think that their talent level is even remotely close to a guy that's in the 1st round, like, I think that should tell you all you need to know about kind of, you know, how we approach the game and what we're looking at there. And it's just a good value bet. I think, you know, as long as he gets decent draft capital, decent landing spot, like, he's not going to rise, I don't think, that much, and he'll still be a value. So that's the whole point.
Jacob Cowan, you are a Dallas Cowboy.
That wouldn't be
need
bad.
a slot.
That sounds like a good landing spot, honestly.
Yeah, I'll take it.